Pelicans at all?
I talked with some Pelicans folks. I didn't make a practice. The Pelicans, it's an interesting thing. Obviously, there's not a true veteran center on the roster. Daniel Tice is the closest thing to it, and he's 6'8". Zion looks good. Came back in good shape. They feel like he's in a great, headspace. Um,
As for Brandon Ingram's headspace, I'm not so sure.
well, listen, the one what they'll tell you from Ingram is, hey, the guy's being a pro, and he basically said on media day, look, I'm not expecting the contract to be done. I'm here. I'm going to be a pro. This is where I am now, and really the best you could hope for in that situation is the guy basically saying, I'm here to do my job and
Yep.
let's go. Like, I'm not going to let this contract be something that lingers and is a black cloud. And that's essentially what he has said. So that's an awkward situation that Ingram doesn't seem to have any interest in making more awkward, which again, that's best you could really hope for in that situation. Frankly, the starting lineup and whether CJ McCollum is or is not in it has a chance to be an awkward type of situation.
Well, let me bring that myself up about that. First off, I think Ingram was talking to reporters the other day and kind of like inadvertently he just sort of said what their starting lineup has been in practice, and McCollum was in it. And that's been one of the things that's kind of leaked out, is that in their workouts. Now, we have had 3 days of practice here. I'm not trying to say that it's been decided, but they've basically been going with Trey Murphy coming off the bench and McCollum in the lineup, which is a very small suspect. DeJounte Murray and McCollum basically starting together.
Well, let's call a spade about that. What's going on over the next 2.5 weeks?
Trey Murphy contract negotiations.
Ding.
Extension negotiations.
Yeah,
that's
correct.
Correct.
And also, come on, like, let's just be real. Trey Murphy is a part of the Pelicans' long-term future.
Right.
CJ is a part of probably ESPN's long-term future. but CJ, like, it's transaction cycle to transaction cycle for him. It's not even year to year, for him with New Orleans at this point. That's just it's nothing against him. That's just the reality of the situation. The other reality is, quite frankly, he's at the point in his career where it probably makes sense for CJ to transition into that 6-man instant offense type of role.
I mean,
especially when the other option is for a team that lacks size, the 6'9", 6'10", floor spacing young guy who is on the rise.
I mean, listen, it would be unserious if the Pelicans go into the season with CJ McCollum starting over Trey Murphy. It would just be an unserious decision. If they're going to play this way, they need to, if they're going to play Zion at center. Now, if you want to say you need to go into the season starting Daniel Tice at center because you don't want Zion to play center full time, and then either Herb Jones or Trey Murphy presumably is coming off the bench, I would disagree with that, but I would at least somewhat understand why you're doing that. Mm-hmm. If you start CJ McCollum over either one of those guys, it's just unserious. Like, they have to go into the season. That I've said a few times, I think that lineup of DeJounte, Herb, Trey, Brandon Ingram, and Zion is the most interesting lineup a team can roll out there this year. I would be fascinated to see what that team looks like with a healthy, slimmed down Zion, Brandon Ingram, at least saying the right things in the contract year, Herb Jones, one of the better perimeter defenders, just flat out defensive players in the league. Trey Murphy, who, if you talk to people around the league, has a ton of fans, guy who can bomb it from deep, has room to grow as a player. And then DeJounte Murray is an interesting player who's in a different situation now and seems very excited to be with the Pelicans. That's a group that I want to see play and see what they can do. If they are not running out there with that group, it's just hard to look at them and think that they're got a chance to be a real factor in the West. Whereas if that 5-man unit could turn into something, maybe they do have a chance to be a factor in the West, but it's got to be having their best 5 players on the court, not messing around with this other stuff that just isn't getting them where they want to go.
Yeah, and if you're making lineup decisions based on appeasing a vet, that's a tough way to go about business when you are trying to, they've kind of steadily ticked up, but they haven't ticked out of the playoff spot. Or I'm sorry, the play-in scenario. They're trying to elevate into a guaranteed playoff berth, and you don't have time, and you can't afford to be doing things you don't want to do to massage. Let's just be honest, to massage an ego. And listen, CJ has every right to have a ton of pride. He's had a great career. He's been a starter. I'd have to go back to see when the last time he came off the bench, if ever. I don't know if he ever came off the bench.
Well, by the way, you said it before, him coming off the bench is the best thing for him. Like, it's a really good role for him to come off the bench with that team, to run the offense when DeJounte isn't on the court, to space the floor when you have any of those guys come off. Like, CJ's still a great shooter. He can still run the point. He's a great vet to have around. Like, he's a very useful player still, but you can't be having him play over Herb Jones or Trey Murphy in the critical moments of the game. Like, this is the time to transition to that kind of role. And if he could do that for another 6-7 years if he wants.
Well, and the other thing here is they took not a all in type of swing, but a pretty big swing on the DeJounte Murray deal, right? And if you're going to make a major move like that, you have to put that player in the best position to succeed. And I would say one of the things that was funky about the fit with DeJounte Murray and Trae Young is DeJounte Murray is a very good defender on point guards, but defending bigger wings and all that stuff is not his forte. He's no longer a defensive asset if he's having to defend, these bigger wings. So I think you want to stagger those guys' minutes as much as possible.